Hi there. My name is Debbie. I'm reading The Go-Giver, and we are a little bit more than halfway through. So if you've missed it, I would suggest to start from the beginning and catch up. So we just finished the fourth law, the law of authenticity, which is the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. Okay, so now we are on chapter 11, and it's Gus. So I will, go about your business. You don't need to be watching. You can just listen if you want. I mean, you can watch if you want. It's probably easier to listen too. So Gus left Joe alone that afternoon. He sensed the younger man needed some space. He didn't know exactly what had happened, but he suspected that Joe was experiencing the cleansing pain of honest self-reflection. As 5 o'clock approached, Gus closed up his desk, switched off his lamp, gathered up his things, and padded over to pluck his tweed jacket from the coat rack. Gus? He turned and saw Joe looking at him. The young man looked pensive. No, it was more, he looked positively contrite. You have a minute? Gus left his jacket on the rack. Sure. He took a seat next to Joe's desk, folded his hands, and looked up. Joe came around his desk, pulled a chair over, and sat next to Gus. I need to tell you something, Joe paused. Gus waited. You've been good to me ever since I first got here, and I've always thought of you as, well, a little naive, old-fashioned, Gus nodded. I never believed the rumors about you, said Joe. I mean the ones about them just keeping you on out of loyalty. And I never believed the other rumors either, the ones about how successful you've been, but that's part true, isn't it? These 5 laws, all Pender stuff about giving, all the stuff, don't you? Gus regarded Joe for a moment before answering. I have been very fortunate in my career, he began. And yes, I have been to the Stone Mansion and learned those same lessons you've been learning this week. Gus looked at his hands, then back at Joe. Let's see. Today being Thursday, I'm going to guess that you've just heard about the 4th law of stratospheric success. Joe nodded. Authenticity. And now I'm supposed to figure out some way to apply it. Gus pursed his lips thoughtfully. Well, seems to me perhaps you just did. Joe stared at Gus for what seemed like an entire minute. Gus smiled back, unblinking. It's you, isn't it? Joe said softly, you're the connector. Gus unfolded his hands, leaned back to his chair, scratched his head, looked out the window, then looked back at Joe and spread out his hands. You got me. I met your friend Pindar 35 years ago, introduced him to Sam Rosen a few years later. A few years after that, I invested a few dollars and bought both men hot dogs at a neighborhood stand I knew about. That hot dog lunch turned out to be a very productive investment. He gave Joe a moment to digest this information, then continued. A little over 10 years ago, I introduced Ernesto Infrate and his wife to Deborah Davenport, the woman who sold my wife our house. Unless I miss my guess, you probably heard her speak earlier today.